It was one of those cold, gray November mornings in Denver, when the air smelled like wet leaves and distant fireplaces. Emma had always loved taking long walks in the park behind her house on West 34th Avenue. It was her way of unwinding before facing another day at the animal clinic where she worked as a veterinary assistant. But that morning felt different. An uneasy stillness hung in the air. She was halfway through her usual route when she heard it. A faint whimper, almost drowned out by the rustling leaves. Emma froze. She turned her head toward the sound, squinting past the line of maple trees. There, beneath the drooping branches of an old oak, she spotted something, or rather, someone. A German shepherd. He was tied tightly to the tree with a length of rusted wire, the kind you'd use for fencing. His fur was matted with mud, and his ribs were faintly visible beneath his coat. The dog's deep brown eyes locked onto hers, filled with an eerie mixture of fear and trust. Emma's heart clenched. "Hey there, buddy," she whispered, taking slow steps forward. "What happened to you?" The shepherd flinched but didn't growl. Instead, he lowered his head in submission, a silent plea for help. Emma knelt, her hands trembling slightly as she reached out. The wire was wound so tightly around his neck that she could see raw patches of skin underneath. "Who the hell does this?" she muttered, feeling anger rise in her chest. She fumbled in her coat pocket, pulling out a small pocket knife she carried for emergencies. Carefully, she began sawing at the wire, murmuring soft reassurances. As she worked, her mind raced. This wasn't some stray. He had the stance, the muscle tone, the intense focus of a trained dog. Emma had seen her fair share of abandoned pets, but this was something else. Finally, with a soft snap, the wire gave way. The dog stayed still, watching her with those piercing eyes, and then, without warning, he slumped against her, exhausted. Emma stroked his fur gently, murmuring, "You're okay now. You're safe." She glanced around, half expecting someone to come storming out of the woods claiming him, but the park was deserted. It was still too early for joggers or dog walkers. "All right, big guy. Let's get you out of here," she said, standing up and tugging gently on his collar. "No tags. Nothing." As they made their way back to her truck, Emma's phone buzzed in her pocket. She fished it out with one hand, frowning at the unknown number. Ignoring it, she hoisted the shepherd into the back seat and climbed in. "First stop, the clinic," she said with determination. "Let's get you checked out." But something about the whole situation gnawed at her. Who would tie up a dog like this and just leave him? And why did he seem trained? Back at Haven Vet Clinic, Emma led the shepherd inside through the back entrance, avoiding the curious gazes of her coworkers. She had barely started examining him when her phone buzzed again. Same unknown number. Annoyed, she finally answered. "Hello." A deep, clipped voice came through the line. "Is this Emma Walker?" Her stomach tightened. "Yes, who's asking?" There was a brief pause. "I believe you have something that belongs to us." Emma's eyes flicked to the shepherd, who was now sitting calmly, watching her with that unnerving focus. "Excuse me," she asked, bristling. "I'm with the Denver K-9 unit," the voice continued. "And you've got our dog. His name is Titan. We need him back. Immediately." Emma's breath caught. "K-9?" She glanced down at the dog again, suddenly seeing the discipline in his posture, the silent readiness in his gaze. "Wait, what? Why was he tied up out there?" "He was abandoned." The voice cut her off. "We can't discuss details over the phone. Just tell me where you are. We'll come get him." Emma hesitated. Something wasn't right. If this was a trained police dog, why had he been left like that? And why did she feel like handing him over might not be the best idea? Her decision had to be made fast. "Look," she said, standing up straighter, "I'm not just handing him over until I know he's okay. He was in bad shape when I found him, and I have a responsibility here." There was a sigh on the other end. "Ms. Walker, you don't know what you're dealing with." Emma's pulse quickened. "I know enough to tell when a dog's been mistreated." A long pause followed. "We'll be there in 30 minutes. Then the line went dead. Emma stared at the phone, her heart pounding. Turning back to the shepherd, Titan, she ran a hand over his head. Looks like you're in a whole lot of trouble. Huh? Big guy, she whispered. Titan simply leaned into her touch. Little did she know, this was just the beginning. Emma paced the small exam room, her mind racing. Titan sat obediently on the floor. His eyes locked onto her every move. She could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on her chest. A canine dog? Abandoned and tied up in the park like a forgotten piece of trash? Something didn't add up. She kneeled in front of him, gently running her fingers through his fur, careful not to touch the raw patches where the wire had bitten into his skin. What happened to you, huh? She whispered. Titan didn't flinch, just watched her with that unnerving calmness. The clinic's front bell chimed, jolting her out of her thoughts. Peeking through the blinds of the exam room, she saw two men in dark suits standing at the reception desk. One of them was holding up a badge, and the receptionist, Lisa, looked a little pale. Emma's gut twisted. These didn't look like local officers. Something about their posture screamed federal. Thinking fast, she slipped back to Titan and whispered, "All right, buddy, I need to figure out what's really going on with you before I hand you over." She quickly grabbed her phone and snapped a few photos of him. The patches of missing fur, the faint scar along his left hind leg, and his soulful eyes. Maybe someone online would know more about him. The sound of footsteps approaching made her heart hammer. She quickly erased the photos from the screen but saved them to the cloud just in case. A sharp knock followed. "Ms. Walker," a deep voice called. She took a deep breath and opened the door. The taller of the two men, with short-cropped hair and cold blue eyes, stepped forward. His badge read Agent Lawson, Federal Task Force. His partner, shorter and stockier, simply stood with his arms crossed. "We spoke on the phone," Lawson said, his gaze flickering briefly to Titan. "Thank you for keeping him safe." Emma crossed her arms. "Yeah, well, I'm still not sure what's going on." Mind explaining why he was left tied to a tree? Lawson's jaw tightened. "That's classified." Emma snorted. "Come on. He's injured. That's not exactly standard protocol for a K9 unit, is it?" The shorter agent, who hadn't spoken yet, shifted. "Listen, ma'am, we just need to take him and we'll be on our way." Emma narrowed her eyes. "Not until you tell me what happened." Lawson exhaled sharply. "Ms. Walker, this isn't your concern." "Yeah? Well, it became my concern the second I found him abandoned and hurt. So, unless you've got a better answer, I'm not letting him go." Titan, sensing the tension, let out a low growl. The agents exchanged glances. Lawson took a step closer, lowering his voice. "This dog is part of an ongoing investigation. His handler is missing. We believe Titan was left there as a message." Emma's eyes widened. "A message? From who?" "We don't know yet," Lawson admitted, his lips thinning. "But if the wrong people find out he's here, you could be in danger." Emma swallowed hard, her grip tightening around Titan's collar. "So what now?" Lawson sighed. "We'll take him somewhere safe." Emma looked down at Titan, his head resting against her knee. Something in her gut screamed that this wasn't right. If his handler was missing, he might be the only clue they had. She wasn't ready to let him go just yet. "Give me a minute," she said, stepping into the back room. Her hands shook as she pulled out her laptop and typed in, "Missing K9 officers in Denver," into the search bar. A few news articles popped up. Scanning quickly, her heart dropped when she saw a headline from 2 days ago. K9 officer Jacob Hart reported missing. Authorities suspect foul play. The article mentioned that Hart's dog, Titan, had also disappeared. Her stomach churned. Something was seriously off. Taking a deep breath, she made a snap decision. She wouldn't hand him over just yet. When she stepped back into the room, she plastered a polite smile on her face. "Sorry, but clinic policy requires a 24-hour hold before releasing a dog to anyone. If he's injured, I need to make sure he's stable first." Lawson frowned. "Ms. Walker." She cut him off. "I don't make the rules." The shorter agent muttered something under his breath, but Lawson nodded begrudgingly. "Fine. We'll be back tomorrow morning." His eyes met hers with a warning. Keep a low profile. Emma nodded, waiting until they were gone before sinking into a chair, exhaling shakily. She turned to Titan, who watched her intently. "Well, buddy," she muttered. "Looks like you're stuck with me for now." Later that night, Emma found herself staring at her laptop screen, a half-eaten sandwich sitting forgotten beside her. She had spent the last few hours digging deeper into Officer Jacob Hart's disappearance. Everything about it smelled suspicious. No ransom demand, no forced entry into his home. Just gone. Titan lay on the floor next to her, his breathing slow and steady. Emma absently reached down to scratch behind his ears, earning a soft sigh from him. Suddenly, a soft ding echoed from her laptop. A message from an anonymous sender appeared in her inbox. "Keep him safe. He knows more than you think. Trust no one." Emma's blood ran cold. She reread the message, her pulse pounding in her ears. Who the hell was watching her? And how did they know she had Titan? She glanced at the dog, who now looked up at her as if sensing her fear. "Guess we're both in this now," she whispered. Just then, her phone buzzed. Another unknown number. With a deep breath, she answered. A distorted voice crackled through the line. "You're in danger. They're coming for the dog. Leave the clinic. Now." Emma's heart slammed against her ribs. "Who is this?" But the line went dead. She didn't need to be told twice. "Come on, Titan," she whispered, grabbing his leash. "We're getting out of here." Emma's hands trembled as she stuffed essentials into her backpack. Her wallet, a first aid kit, an extra leash for Titan, and her laptop. Titan, sensing the tension in the air, stayed close to her side. His ears perked up and alert. The clinic's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting long, eerie shadows across the empty exam room. Her mind raced. Someone out there knew about Titan, knew where she was. That anonymous message, "Keep him safe. Trust no one." Played on repeat in her head. Could she even trust the agents who came earlier? She didn't wait to find out. "Let's go, buddy," she whispered, slipping out through the back door into the cold night air. The parking lot was empty except for her beat-up old Jeep. She unlocked the doors and Titan jumped in without hesitation. Emma climbed behind the wheel, her fingers gripping the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white. As she pulled onto the dark road, her thoughts swirled. Where to? Her apartment was out of the question, too obvious. If whoever sent that message knew about the clinic, they'd know where she lived too. She had to think fast. Her brother's cabin, just outside Boulder, tucked away in the woods. It wasn't much, but it was secluded. And right now, that was exactly what she needed. She pressed her foot on the gas and dialed her brother, Liam. The phone rang 3 times before his groggy voice answered. "Emma? It's past midnight." "No time to explain," she cut him off. "I need to crash at your place for a few days." A pause. "What's going on?" "I'll tell you when I get there," she said, glancing in the rearview mirror. The road behind her was empty, but that nagging feeling in her gut wouldn't go away. Liam sighed. "Yeah, all right. I'll leave the door unlocked." "Thanks, Liam. I owe you." She hung up, focusing back on the road. Titan let out a soft whine from the back seat. Emma reached back to pat his head. "We'll be safe soon, boy." Just as she settled into the drive, headlights appeared behind her. One car, then another. Her chest tightened. They weren't police cars, just plain black sedans, the kind that screamed government or worse. "Crap," she muttered under her breath. She took a sharp turn onto a side road, hoping to shake them off. But they followed. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears. She floored the gas pedal, her Jeep jerking forward. The sedans kept pace. Damn it! Emma gritted her teeth and made a split-second decision, swerving onto an old service road that led deeper into the forest. The narrow dirt path was bumpy, branches scraping against the sides of her car. Titan barked once, sensing the urgency. The headlights behind her bobbed and swayed but didn't disappear. Emma's breathing grew ragged. This wasn't just about Titan anymore. She was in real danger. As the road wound sharply, she saw an opening in the trees up ahead. Without thinking, she killed the headlights and veered off the path, steering the Jeep behind a thick clump of evergreens. She shut off the engine, heart pounding, and crouched low in her seat. The sedan sped past, their headlights slicing through the darkness. Emma let out a shaky breath, watching as the red taillights faded into the night. "That was too close," she whispered. She waited a few minutes, listening for any signs of pursuit. Silence. Turning to Titan, she whispered, "We're okay. For now." After another minute, she restarted the Jeep and carefully navigated back onto the road, taking the long way toward Boulder, staying off the main highways. She had to stay under the radar until she figured out what was really going on. The cabin was a welcome sight, nestled deep in the forest with no neighbors for miles. Emma parked and hustled inside with Titan close on her heels. Liam, still half asleep, met her at the door with a raised eyebrow. "What the hell is going on, Em?" he asked, rubbing his eyes. Emma pulled off her jacket and gestured toward Titan. "Long story short, this guy's a K9 and people are after him." Liam's eyes widened. "You're kidding." "I wish," Emma muttered, flopping onto the couch. "I found him tied up to a tree, and now federal agents and mystery stalkers are after him. I think his handler is missing, and I think Titan knows something." Liam ran a hand through his hair, glancing at the dog, who was now curled up at Emma's feet. "All right, so what's the plan?" Emma stared at the flickering fireplace, her mind racing. "I need to figure out who really wants him, and why." Liam sighed. "You always get yourself into the weirdest situations." He reached for a beer and handed one to her. "So where do we start?" Emma pulled out her laptop and brought up the photos she'd taken of Titan's injuries. "I don't know yet, but I'm betting whoever wants him back isn't telling the full story." Liam leaned in. "Well, lucky for you, I know a guy who's a former military handler. Maybe he can give you some insight." Emma nodded, feeling the tiniest bit of hope. "Call him." First thing in the morning, Titan lifted his head and let out a low, rumbling growl, his ears perking up. Emma froze. "Liam." "Turn off the lights." Liam flicked the switch and they sat in silence. The crunch of footsteps outside sent shivers down Emma's spine. Someone was here. Emma held her breath, her heart hammering in her chest as she pressed herself against the wall, listening intently. Titan stood rigid beside her, his ears perked up and his muscles tense. His low growl reverberated through the cabin like a warning. Liam, standing by the window, carefully peeked through the blinds. His face darkened. "There's someone out there," he whispered. Emma felt a shiver crawl down her spine. She reached for her phone, her fingers shaking as she typed out a quick message to 911. But before she could hit send, the signal bars vanished. "No service," she muttered under her breath. Of course, Liam swore under his breath and quietly grabbed the baseball bat he kept by the fireplace. "If they try anything..." Before he could finish, the sound of glass shattering in the kitchen made them both jump. "Get down," Emma hissed, pulling Liam behind the couch. Titan was already in position, his gaze locked on the kitchen door, his body low to the ground, ready to strike. Emma's pulse raced as she heard slow, deliberate footsteps crunching over broken glass. Whoever it was, they weren't in a hurry. They knew they had the upper hand. Liam gritted his teeth, clutching the bat tightly. "What do they even want?" Emma glanced at Titan. "Him," she whispered. "They want Titan." The footsteps grew closer. Emma's mind scrambled for a plan. She motioned for Liam to stay low and reached for the fire extinguisher tucked beneath the sink. The kitchen door creaked open, and a figure emerged, tall, dressed in dark tactical gear, face covered by a black balaclava. The intruder scanned the room with military precision. Emma's instincts kicked in. Without hesitation, she jumped up and unleashed the fire extinguisher directly into the intruder's face. A burst of white foam clouded the air, and Titan lunged with a ferocity Emma hadn't seen before. His powerful jaws clamped down on the man's arm, dragging him to the ground with a grunt. Liam seized the moment, swinging the bat down hard. The intruder let out a muffled curse and struggled to free himself, but Titan held firm, growling deep in his throat. "Run, Emma!" Liam shouted, but she wasn't about to leave them behind. Instead, she grabbed the man's gun, which had skidded across the floor, and pointed it at him. "Who sent you?" she demanded. The man didn't respond, just glared at her through the foam clinging to his face. Liam, panting, tightened his grip on the bat. "We call the cops now." Emma hesitated. "No. If these guys are government or worse, we need to be smart about this." Suddenly, the man reached into his vest and pressed something. A tiny blinking red light appeared. "Tighten, off!" Emma yelled, and the dog immediately released him. The intruder smirked under his mask. Too late. Before Emma could react, a loud boom echoed outside, shaking the walls. The lights flickered, and within seconds, another vehicle skidded to a stop outside. More of them. Liam yanked Emma toward the back door. "We have to go now." Emma grabbed Titan's leash, and they bolted through the back exit, sprinting into the dark forest. The cold night air stung Emma's face, but she didn't stop. She could hear the shouts of the intruders behind them, their heavy boots crunching through the underbrush. Titan ran beside her, his pace steady, his ears scanning every sound around them. Emma's heart pounded as she whispered to herself, "Just keep going." They ran deeper into the woods, Emma's thoughts racing. Who were these people? If the government wanted Titan, why weren't they acting through official channels? And what did Titan know that was worth hunting him down like this? After what felt like an eternity, Emma and Liam stumbled upon an old hunting cabin deep in the forest. It was barely standing, its windows broken and its door hanging off its hinges. But it would do. They scrambled inside, barricading the entrance as best they could. Emma sank against the wall, her chest heaving. Titan sat next to her, his eyes sharp and alert, as if waiting for her next move. Liam slumped down beside her. What now? Emma stared at the flickering flashlight beam she had managed to find inside the cabin. We need to figure out why they want him so bad. She opened her laptop, her hands shaking, and accessed the photos she had taken earlier. Scrolling through them, she focused on the faint scar along Titan's hind leg. Liam frowned. What's that? Emma zoomed in. The scar wasn't just a random injury, it was too precise, too straight. With a growing sense of dread, she opened an X-ray filter app she used at the clinic and ran the image through it. Her blood turned to ice. There, embedded under Titan's skin, was a small, metallic implant. "Oh my God," Emma whispered. "Titan isn't just a K9. He's carrying something. Something they want." Liam's face paled. "What do you mean?" Emma's mind raced. If they went through this much trouble to leave him in the park, knowing someone like me would find him, it means they were desperate to hide him. But now they're desperate to get him back. Titan whined softly, nudging Emma's knee as if urging her to keep going. Emma took a deep breath. Whatever this implant is, it's big. And we're right in the middle of it. Liam rubbed his face. What do we do now? Emma locked eyes with Titan and made a decision. We find out who's behind this. And we end it. The air inside the old hunting cabin was thick with tension. Emma's mind whirled as she stared at the screen, the image of the implant under Titan's skin flashing before her eyes. Whatever it was valuable enough for dangerous people to come after them. Liam paced in front of the boarded-up window, his jaw tight. "Emma, we can't just sit here and wait for them to find us. We need a plan." Emma nodded, exhaling slowly. "We do." She turned to Titan, gently running a hand down his side. "And it starts with figuring out what's inside you, buddy." Her phone buzzed suddenly, making her jump. Another unknown number. Against her better judgment, she answered. Emma Walker, the voice on the other end, said. It was Agent Lawson. She stiffened. "What do you want?" "I know you're scared," Lawson continued, "and I know you think you're doing the right thing by keeping the dog. But you have no idea what you're up against." Emma's grip on the phone tightened. "I know there's an implant inside him, and I know someone's willing to kill for it. So why don't you tell me what I'm up against?" Lawson hesitated, then sighed. "That implant contains encrypted intelligence. Classified surveillance data that Titan's handler was using to expose corruption inside our own government." Emma's heart skipped a beat. Corruption? Yes. Hart was close to uncovering a covert operation involving smuggling, arms deals, and some very powerful people. But they got to him first. We believe they left Titan as bait to flush out anyone who might dig deeper. Emma's stomach churned. And you're telling me this? Why? Because you need to get out. Now, Lawson said firmly, the people after that dog won't stop. They have resources. They'll find you. Emma's eyes darted to Liam, who was listening closely. So what do I do? She asked cautiously. There's a contact in Boulder. Agent Ramirez. He's the only one you can trust. He'll know what to do. But you need to get there without being followed. Emma swallowed hard. And if I don't? Then you, your brother, and the dog won't make it through the night. A cold shiver ran down her spine. Fine. But if this is a trap, I swear. It's not. The line went dead. Emma looked at Liam. We need to get to Boulder. There's a safe contact there. Liam sighed heavily. Do we trust him? Emma shrugged. We don't have a choice. The next hour was a blur. Emma packed supplies while Liam scouted outside, ensuring they hadn't been followed. Titan remained vigilant, his ears twitching at every creak of the trees. By the time they got into Emma's jeep, the forest was eerily silent. She gripped the wheel tightly as they drove onto the highway, taking the back roads whenever possible. Emma's eyes flickered to the rearview mirror every few seconds. Do you think they're still tracking us? Liam, scanning the darkness behind them, muttered, I don't know, but we can't slow down to find out. Halfway to Boulder, Emma's phone pinged again. Another anonymous message. Too late. They're closer than you think. Panic seized her chest. They're on to us, she whispered. Just then, headlights appeared in the distance behind them, gaining fast. Liam cursed. Drive, Em. We gotta lose them. Emma floored the gas pedal, her jeep roaring down the empty highway. The pursuing vehicle closed in, and before she knew it, the black SUV was right on their tail, ramming the back of their jeep with a bone-jarring jolt. Titan barked wildly as Emma swerved to avoid losing control. Hang on, she yelled. Liam grabbed her arm. Up ahead. Take the old service road. Emma spotted it just in time, yanking the wheel to the right and veering onto the narrow gravel path. Dust billowed behind them, and the SUV struggled to follow. Come on, she muttered, praying for a miracle. Then, as they rounded a bend, bright floodlights flared ahead, illuminating a small checkpoint. Armed figures stood in front, rifles raised. Emma's heart dropped. Was this another trap? Before she could react, a man stepped forward, holding up a badge. Agent Ramirez, stop the vehicle, he shouted. Emma slammed on the brakes, her tires skidding across the dirt. The SUV behind them screeched to a halt, and in seconds, Ramirez's team surrounded it, guns trained. Liam exhaled shakily. Holy crap, we made it. Emma stepped out, Titan beside her. Agent Ramirez approached cautiously. Emma Walker? She nodded. He looked down at Titan and sighed. You did the right thing bringing him here. He knelt beside the dog and gently ran a scanner over his leg. The device beeped, confirming the implant's presence. We'll get this to the right people, Ramirez assured her. Hart risked everything for this information. Emma swallowed hard. And what happens now? Ramirez looked at her with a solemn expression. We make sure the people responsible pay for what they've done. And you should lay low for a while. Emma glanced at Titan, who nuzzled against her side. What about him? Ramirez smiled. I think he's found his person. Emma's chest swelled with emotion. He's staying with me? Ramirez nodded. After what you've been through, I'd say you've earned it. A week later, Emma sat on the porch of Liam's cabin, watching the sunset while Titan lay beside her, his head resting on her lap. The adrenaline of the past few days had finally begun to fade, but the weight of everything she had uncovered still lingered. Liam stepped outside, handing her a cup of coffee. So, are you going to keep him? Emma smiled softly, scratching behind Titan's ears. Yeah, I think he's part of the family now. Liam chuckled. You always did have a way of finding trouble. Emma grinned. Maybe. But this time, I think I found something worth the trouble. Titan lifted his head, eyes scanning the horizon. Emma knew things wouldn't go back to normal overnight, But one thing was certain. Whatever came next, she and Titan would face it together. As she sipped her coffee, she thought back to everything that had happened and whispered to Titan, "We saved each other, didn't we?" Titan's tail thumped against the porch, his way of saying yes. Emma had learned that sometimes doing the right thing meant stepping into danger. She'd learned that trusting her instincts could save lives. And most importantly, she'd learned that loyalty, whether from a person or a dog, was the strongest force of all. Her advice to anyone who might find themselves in a situation like hers? Never underestimate a dog. They know more than they let on.